So today we're going to be taking a look at this watch from Tessé watches. We'll see how good the autofocus wants to be. This is a pretty cool watch. It's the brand's first watch they've ever released, and I think they did pretty good for their first ever watch. Some unique little aspects about this guy, and let's take a closer look. As a quick note, I was sent this watch to review. I'm not keeping the watch. It was just lent in for a period of about 2 weeks, closer to 3 now at this point. And yeah, just my personal thoughts. They don't have to review the video in any way. And last but not least, I'm wearing this crazy shirt because it matches the watch. So let's get into the review. So we have a diameter of about 40.3, lug to lug of 46.8, height of 10.7, and a lug width of 20 millimeters. Some other general specifications, we're going to have the Sellita SW330 movement beating away in here. This is currently the quote-unquote unfinished version. There's going to be some more finishing on the base movement as well as a customized rotor for the actual full production model. But we do have this beautifully engraved movement holder. The watch case back is sapphire. The front of the watch case is sapphire as well, or sorry, the front crystal. It is actually a double dome sapphire with inner AR on the front, which is nice to see. The watch is normal 316L steel, but has a additional hardness coating applied that brings it up to 1200 HV, which is a similar hardness coating that Traska uses. So it goes from a watch that is about 200 for base steel up to 1200, so about 6 times more resistant to scratches, which is really good. We have 100 meters of stated water resistance with just a regular push-pull crown, and realistically, last but not least, the watch retails directly from the brand for full retail is going to be $1745 at least as of recording. Right now it is on sale for $1566, and I believe if you use the code down below in the comments, you can get it for slightly cheaper as a type of pre-order. So starting off with the dial here, and I think they did a lot of nice touches overall. We can see with the dial main middle portion itself, we have a kind of classic sunburst finish in this grayish blue tone. I think it really looks nice. It's a unique color you don't see very often. We of course have the GMT hand in more that lighter blue tone, which does pop out nicely from the dial. GMT text done in white as well. And then the 24-hour text on the outside is done in that light blue. You can kind of tell it's a little hard to read. Apparently in the standardized version or in the production version, they're going to go with a white printing of that 24-hour track, which I think will be more legible. For every hour, we have this beautiful marker, which is a little on the large side. It's fairly thick in a good way. It gives you a lot of depth to the dial, but it also slants down at an angle at the very edge of each of the markers, which just gives it a little bit extra light play that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Again, it just draws your attention in nicely. Overall, just very minimal text here, just the logo and the brand name at the top, the model name, and the fact that it's a GMT there at the 12 o'clock. Very nicely balanced, 2 lines and 2 lines. Really can't complain. Swiss made at the very bottom 6 o'clock. And I think they did a very good job with the dial. It's clean, it's classic. The actual stick handset really just does blend in nice with the markers. There's a nice harmonious feel about the dial. No shape feels really out of place here. The date wheel also is matched in color, which for a unique color like this is pretty rare to see, but it's nice that they went that really extra mile to create something so customized as that date wheel color. And is the case with most pre-production watches, the finishing here is not going to be reflective of the final product. So you can see the hands are a bit scratched. It's not going to look like that, or at least it should be done to a little bit of a higher standard on the final production version. But for now, at least we can see some of the finer details they've done with this watch. Like for example, of course, we can see for the Tessé logo that has this 3-dimensionality to it. It has this depth, which is nice to see. We can see the dial has a more complex construction than you would assume at first. It has this base dial that has that sunburst, which is on a kind of layer above the rest of the dial. Then you have more of this grained finish towards the end of that hour marker, and then in the very base of the hour marker you have this more engraved minutes track or seconds track. So I think it just looks interesting. There's a lot of mix of finishes that come together in a harmony that I think worked really well together. And it's nice too that they were able to keep this pretty consistent color tone of this gray blue throughout all the elements and not have it feel too disjointed, too really at odds with each other, because when you have it at a distance they do blend together really well. And then at this angle too, you can see the GMT track in that kind of rehat area. It is done well. I like that it's put off the dial and really declutters everything. You don't see a lot of these dressier style GMTs around. But like I said, and obviously as is seen by the brand, the blue is a little harder to read, so that white I think will contrast better because all the other white elements on this watch are very readable. Looking at the marker itself, it does again have this beautiful shape to it, very flat and broad on the top. Towards the end, again, it slopes down and really points inwards towards the dial, which is a nice touch. It really draws your eye in. But like I mentioned, it is a thicker marker. It really stands up off the dial pretty proudly, which just helps with depth, perceived depth, and just a little bit of a light play as well. So it's a really well done marker. Of course, hopefully the finishing is good on the final QC'd version. The Lume, I think, is integrated pretty well too, where it doesn't take up too much of the length or the depth of the marker and just complements pretty nicely. Then here we can see that beautifully matched date wheel, perfectly matching more towards the outside of the watch, but like I said, those kind of sunburst tones tend to match most of the dial anyway, and it does integrate pretty well within the tones of the watch. Taking a look at the watch in natural light, you can see more direct sunlight. You're getting this very apparent rainbow type effect or bow tie type effect with that sunburst dial there. Darker patterns, lighter patterns. The markers aren't popping tremendously, but they still look pretty good. The K-shape, the finishing really holds up under harsh lighting, which is always nice to see. And there isn't really any aspect of the watch that I think looks bad under direct light, unless you just don't like that bow tie sunray effect. Looking in more shaded light, we now have a much softer appearance. That bow tie effect dramatically reduced and looks more gradual, more premium in my opinion as well. The color gets softer, it becomes a more gentle, grayer tone as well. And it just looks fantastic. The case shape isn't as harsh, the light plays off the case and the roundness of the case and the brushing of the case much nicer in that shaded light. And it just is a very pretty watch. The markers catch the light more, and to me it looks the best and the most premium in the shade. Moving on to the case, and this is probably one of the more interesting parts about the watch itself. We do have a mix of finishing. We have this sunburst bezel here, which is actually a rarer finish to see, and I actually really like how it's done. It's a bezel that doesn't feel as plain and boring as all the brushed or polished ones that we see. It's something a little bit more unique, especially the fact that the bezel itself is kind of more of a true facet slash part of the case, where we have this maybe tiny little inner ring around the sapphire that is fully polished. So it is nice to see this surface done in this way. Looking on the side, you get almost the effect of a polished chamfer. What it really is kind of this mid-case, I guess, bumper, I'll like to call it. At the very top, it has a sloped and polished surface. Also on the bottom that mirrors it. So not only does it perfectly fall in line with the curve and the shape of the case, but it almost gives an effect of framing the case itself, gives a polished surface for your eye to kind of latch onto, and it mirrors pretty nicely with the fact that the lug surface here goes into full polish and kind of creates this full frame effect. Looking at the lines on the side of the case here for a second, it's done really well. I mean, it's done to a standard I don't think they even had to necessarily. You have these deeper portions in between all the lines that are done in this more blasted finish, and then the more raised portion of those lines are done in a polish. So it gives this really nice effect. You get these darker and lighter portions of that surface, and it's not something that maybe you're going to be interacting with all the time, but as you're looking at the watch, it's just a nice detail. They could have easily just done a completely high polished side of the case and not included this more unique portion of it, but I think I'm glad that it's there. It looks different, it looks unique, and it's done well. The lugs themselves are on the stubbier side. It's very short. They are very thick for the lugs themselves. It's not usual you see this type of lug styling on a more cushion style case. Usually you see the more rounded, softer, even almost more Panerai-esque type lugs, where this is a more defined shape, a more triangular type of shape here. And it really draws your eye in. It's unique. It kind of defines the case shape a little bit more, and it's nice to see they didn't just go for something more standardized. Focusing quickly, we do have a very nicely done signed buckle here. You have chamfering along the side of the buckle itself, a very nice logo done at the top there. This is one of the better buckles I've seen done by a company, so good on them. And then really quickly, of course, this is not going to be the movement that is in the final production version, but the winding is actually incredibly smooth on this watch. It feels very nice. The first position is going to be changing the date. The second position going, or really still the first position but going up instead, is going to be changing the GMT hand. This is what's called a traveler GMT. It's not a true GMT. To be fair, it's my preferred style of GMT because it's easy to change the date, it's easy to change the time, and I don't really see the benefit of a true GMT. I'm sure there's a reason that it exists. I don't really know why. I like this. This is a very functional version of a GMT to me. So yeah, pretty good functionality. Each function feels pretty smooth, very good, and doesn't really feel cheap, which is good because it's not a cheap watch. Side of the case over here, apparently inside there's going to be more of an enameling than what there is now. The case back again will be changed at a little bit of a later date, including the logo and more finishing. And we do just have some general text along the outboard there. The strap itself is made by the company. It's fairly good. It's just a little bit on the longer side, at least for my wrist. So it's not something I wore on the strap, or sorry, on the watch overly often. But let's see how it looks now. Earlier, I was wearing this Traska Summiteer, and for reference, this is a 36.5 millimeters. If I move it up on my wrist a little bit, you get a better idea. I have a 6.5 inch wrist right here. Here we have the watch sitting on my 6.5 inch wrist, and I'm quite literally on the last hole of the strap. So realistically, both on how the watch wears and how the strap wears on me, I don't think this is made for smaller wrists. It is one of those things where the presence of it is on the larger side. In theory, does it fit me? Yes. Do I think it looks perfect? No. Although there's technically space on either side of my wrist and it still fits, it's still just a very large presence. It's gonna be a larger wearing watch. So I think this watch works a little bit better on larger wrists. I think if you have over a 7-inch wrist, 7.5 inch wrist, it will look really good on you. But for people under 7 inches, you just have to have either a very flat wrist or like the look of a bigger watch. Now what is nice is the watch is really only about 10.5 millimeters thick, and it is very curvaceous. This thing beautifully sits on the wrist. It doesn't really rise up very high. It could fit under a dress cuff, I think, no problem. And that is really nice about the watch. You also have the very top surface of the watch being this curved metal surface, this really nice soft curve. So the thickest point of the watch is truly the crystal, and everything else is even thinner and even more comfortable and even slimmer wearing than that point. We get a pretty good color match. This is not something I expected to happen, but hey, it's a happy accident when you have a watch strap that matches the watch pretty perfectly. This is made by Has No Bounds. Really good quality straps over there for good prices. And like I said, matches the watch really well. Now, the only thing I will say is if you look at the original strap, it has less of a taper. It's a 20-18, where this is a 20-16. I do think a larger, thicker strap does work better on this watch, mainly because you have larger elements, you have thicker lugs, you have a larger case shape, especially for a square watch. So this one with the larger taper, I think is going to feel a little bit off balance, but let's see. Like I said, it feels a little bit top heavy just by a smidge on this larger tapered strap. It's actually not terrible, and that's mainly because a lot of my wrist is being taken up by the bulk of the watch face. But I think it looks beautiful on the strap. The color tones match really well. And you can also see with a strap that actually fits me, the watch looks more proportional, at least to me looks more proportional. It still is large, there's no way to get out about that. I mean, if they could have made this maybe 38, 37, it would have been a more universal sizing, but I do think they're gearing towards really just bigger wrists overall. It's nice because it's stubby, it still wears well, but I think just for my personal preference, I would have liked a smidgen smaller in this kind of design language. And one aspect I do really like about this case is they created this very large lip on the inside here to accommodate straps. So even with this strap from Colareb, which is on the thicker side, it has a lot of bulk here, I can still fit it in here because they had such a nice cutout for the watch strap in the case. So it's a nice little detail they've done there, because I've had a lot of cushion style cases which are rounded here. You can see it has a top rounded edge, but they cut away under that to fit the strap and accommodate the strap, which is a really good point of design. This I think looks really cool. It has the 70s inspiration already from the brand's admission, from the case shape, from the marker shape, even kind of the color palette. And I think this watch strap kind of pairs really well. It has this almost wood floor grain feel to it. I mean, strap is made out of wood, but this pattern, this color, this tone, these two tones on each other, it really, I think, pairs well, evokes that 70s feel. There you have it on wrist, and I think you can see pretty immediately that less tapered strap works so much better than the previous one. You have a kind of square motif in this strap that pairs well with the pseudo square, cushion style case of the watch itself. Kind of has a pattern within pattern type feel to it. Looks good. The strap makes the watch a little bit brighter. Again, this plants the watch on my wrist a little bit better. And once I put it on a strap like this, I'm like, hey, you know what? The watch isn't that bad. I like it aesthetically. I just, again, for personal preference, I mean, I was wearing a 36 earlier. For personal preference, I would just want it slightly smaller. Here we have a nice little deluxe rip-off strap. I bought this off AliExpress for like 30 bucks, I think. Has this kind of square-ish repeating pattern, kind of basket weave type pattern inside of it. Looks pretty good. Ties in with the white elements on the watch, the white text, eventually the white GMT text. So something like this is pretty cool. And there we have it. Looks pretty good. As you can see too, I'm wearing it a little bit higher on my wrist. I actually have a 6-inch wrist here, closer to a 6-inch wrist. And it actually still looks really good. I mean, realistically, the watch still fits. It has good proportions. It's pretty short lug to lug. So taking a look at the Lume here, they did a pretty good job. It's a good application. Of course, it's probably going to be a little bit better on the actual production version, but everything's pretty legible. The actual hour markers are delineated, which I don't usually see. You see the 12, 3, 6, and 9 are longer, and you see the rest of the hours are shorter and stubbier. So it's actually pretty legible. Pretty easy to see what hour you are actually on at a quick glance. The GMT hand itself has the actual hour or point or arrow lit up, so you can actually read the GMT time in the dark if you really needed to. And the only thing really that isn't loomed is the seconds hand, and realistically, I don't think you really need things down to the second in the pitch black darkness, so we should be okay. Reluming and comparing to the Timex, we can see very similar glows from the outset. Very classic kind of BGW9 signature to it. It looks good. It's done well. At the end of the day, for a dressier watch, this is pretty good lume. Is it going to last you forever? No, but is it going to be legible when you need it to be? Yeah. And I really have no complaints. To be fair, would I have done lume on this watch? Probably not. But I think people just tend to like their lume. Watch nerds like their lume, so for a watch that does use lume, they did a good job. So starting off with the pros of this GMT here, and I think overall, I mean, it just is a really well executed dial. The finishing is there. You have multiple finishes from the sunray coloration of the dial, the actual more etching around the outer dial, just the overall tone they went with here. This kind of lagoonish-y blue-gray color is just unique. It's interesting. It stands out on a watch box. It looks nice. So the dial, the finishings on the dial, it all is done to a good standard. Another big pro for me for this watch is going to be the case shape. We don't see a lot of cushion shapes out there. This cushion shape is executed well, and it's just very comfortable. It's not too thick. It is probably, I think, the only GMT cushion case that I know of. I'm sure there's some random watch out there, but especially not at this price point. And again, the finishing on the case is done well. The fact that you have these accents of polish that really frame the case nicely, the brushing is done nicely. There's a lot of little tiny aspects on the case that are done really well. One of my favorite aspects specifically is the fact that they did that strap cut out in the case. So although this seems like it couldn't take very thick straps, that little inset into the case shape itself makes it pretty much compatible to any strap, which is nice to see here. Last but not least, I really like that this is a GMT, and specifically a GMT done in a dressier variation. It doesn't have an external rotating bezel. It is more of an elegant style GMT, and that's something a little on the rarer side. We're starting to see it more with brands like Monta and Ferrer and all this other stuff, but it's still not as big of a category as I would like to see, because I think is a cool variation to all the, really at this point, probably millions of GMT sports watches that are out there. Now moving on to cons, and one of the cons, and this is just completely personal preference, to me it's just a little too large. I think at 38, maybe even 37 millimeters, it would feel a lot more classical. It would feel a little bit more unique in a sense. I think at the 40, it still wears well. Like, I don't think it looks insane on my wrist, but it is just meant for larger wrists. And if you have a larger wrist, you're gonna like this watch. But for someone with a wrist size like me, it just would have been better just a touch smaller, a little more unique to me, and almost even dressier than it already is, which I think would have been cool. Now, a true con is that the GMT track isn't the most visible. Of course, on this model, they're changing it to a white text and it's going to be more intense printing, but will it still be that visible once it's actually made that way? Probably not, just because the way the crystal is cut and the way the actual GMT track is tucked at the very edges of that crystal. So honestly, it's personal preference whether or not that bothers you. I think it's kind of cool that the GMT track is kind of not there when you don't need it, and it is there if you want to actually angle it and find it. But it isn't the most easy to read at a complete quick glance. At the end of the day, you're going to have to spend more time looking at your watch. If you like the watch, that's not too bad of a thing. Really, I don't have many other cons for this watch. It's pretty well made. I guess you could say it's a little on the pricier side, around $1,800 full retail. But we're comparing this to things that Formex uses a similar movement around $2,000. You have Monta around $2,000 using a similar movement. Ferrosher maybe I think is more closer to $1,400, maybe even $1,200. So that's better value overall. But having had this at a fairer in hand, this is better made in some ways. So it's going to be what you value aesthetically, what you like, and this K-shape is pretty cool. But really, there's not much else to say. It's a really well executed watch, especially for a brand's first entry into watches. I love the fact that they went for a complication in an execution style you don't see very often. The dress GMT is very cool. They went with a color palette you don't always see, which is really nice. They have also a more true teal blue color that is also very pretty. I'm excited to see what Tessé Watches does in the future. If you're interested in this watch at all, I don't think you'll really be disappointed, as long as you have a slightly bigger wrist than mine. And yeah, that's what I think. Those are just my thoughts, my ramblings. Thank you as always for watching the video, and I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you in another one.